How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the channel. This is Big Daddy Dave, and this is another Farm Sim Talk here. I am so excited for tonight's episode. This is a show where we go ahead and discuss uh, where we interview other creators here within the farm sim community and get to know them a little bit more personal than what we get to experience them through, whether it's their channels, whether their interactions through the community, whatever the case may be. So I am very, very excited for tonight's showing. Before we get going, though, I'm going to go ahead and give a quick shout out to several people that I see in the audience. I see Pippa, Crimea River, Why Not Gaming. We also got Vanessa. We've got Matt. Who else do I see down there? Brennan, thank you all so very, very much for coming out here tonight and hanging out with us. I am joined here by my guest, Cavalier Roy. Roy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, thanks. Been
That's
looking forward to this, actually.
I have been too. You're actually one of the original map makers, modders, who I actually got into communications with over the span here on Farming Simulator, and it's was one that I was really kind of excited about to be able to sit down and talk to you in real life, not just through keyboard strokes kind of thing. So it was it's an absolute pleasure to have you on here tonight.
It's a pleasure to be on here.
So before we get going, want to give you the opportunity to let everybody know where they can find you, or give yourself any kind of promo that you want to do.
Um, I'm on YouTube under the same name, Cavalier Roy, and Discord the same. Feel free to uh, find me on either of those.
Excellent. And do you want to give yourself or anybody any shout outs before we go?
Well, may as well give one to the Shanty Boys, saying that they're all here. Brennan, Matt, Vanessa, hi, thank you and welcome. And to yourself, clearly.
Thank you very much, and thank you, the Shanty Boys, for showing up here and hanging out with us all tonight. Looking forward to this. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. We've got the show. It's broken out into segments. The first segment I call Digging Up Dirt. This is a segment where we kind of start to get to know you, who you are kind of more personally behind the scenes, because we generally interact with you through your mods within the Farming Simulator community. So we really don't get to see much outside of like your YouTube channel. And here lately, my experience have been, and I could be, I don't follow you very, very closely, but been seeing you doing a lot of, I think it's called Wreckfest is the game I've been catching you the most on.
Yeah, it's like my escape. All the stress, go out, go and do some racing. I'm more of a racer than a wrecker, but occasionally I like to wreck people as well.
Oh, that's good times. So, like I said, this is the kind of the segment where we're going to get to know you a little bit better. So, first question I have for you is, do you have a job outside of the whole content creation, or are you just a full-time, YouTuber, map maker, modder?
I'm more of a modder. I began way before Farm Sim, modding stuff, and Farm Sim was just one of those games I was looking for something that was multiplayer, and found that on the shelf, disc version back in the day, and picked it up, took it home, played it, and then was like, yeah, this would make a good multiplayer game, and then modding followed not long after.
I gotcha. And what's your home dynamic like? Are you married? Do you have kids?
I with a partner and 4 kids, ranging from 4 years old up to 17 years of age.
Oh wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
So I asked that question of everyone because I am curious as to how, especially with having 4 kids that range in age so greatly, what how do you find the balance between your home life with the family and your modding life, creating such amazing mods and maps for us?
It can be a juggling things around at times, but for the most part, it's actually quite well. The three of them are in their teenage years, so they're off doing their own stuff on their own computers most of the time. And the youngest one's busy watching Peppa Pig or something on TV, so it's not so bad.
I
A lot
gotcha.
easier than it could have been.
And do any of them participate in the farm sim community themselves?
Not really.
Okay.
They've played it, but they don't really. They're not begging for the game and going, "Can I play this with you?" or "Can you game me?"
I, I don't often hear that there's a lot of the younger crowd when it comes to the farming simulator world. There are certainly, but when I tend to hear it, I tend to hear it mostly from people who like ourselves who are involved in the space and find out that, oh hey, I'm creating for it, I'm doing content for it, or whatever the case, and that's what kind of gets them interested into it. So I was just curious if that was the case with your kids. So what kind of hobbies do you have outside of Farming Simulator?
Uh, More or less strategy games. I'm into 4X games within the gaming area. Outside of that, not much. I'm more of a person that likes to stay inside, close the curtains, and forget the outside world exists.
I can't say as I blame you for that one. I'm kind of the same way. But what about sports? Are you into any sports or anything like that? Or
Um, I used to watch a lot of F1, um, Formula One racing, and obviously did league racing back in the day. But um, recently, with the changes that have been brought to the sport, I'm now a big fan of it.
what kind of changes are you not a fan of?
DRS. I liked back in the day where fighting for position was fighting for position. You didn't have any aids that would help you pass the car ahead of you.
That makes sense. It's more the man and machine kind of merge as one, but then as technology grows, it kind of makes it to where it's less of a man with machine. It's more machine and machine. Is that basically what you're getting at?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It seems to have taken that dynamic away. I mean, it not fully, but it feels like that. They're now they're waiting on a line and they're holding back before they hit the DRS so they can pass because if they pass the car before that DRS line, then the other car gets it and they don't want that, and then it just dramas happen and it just takes away the fun of the race, in my opinion.
I gotcha. And do you like to read books, watch movies, listen to music?
Movies mostly. The daughter and I watch a lot of movies um, and TV shows. Recently, she got me into Stranger Things, so we watched all of that. Um, and now we're waiting on season 5 to drop this year or next.
Okay. Is there any other movies or shows that you're into?
Uh, Reacher. I waiting on that one to come out later this year. Um,
It's
yeah,
actually
there's a few movies, but yeah, it's mostly TV shows that I find myself watching just recently.
it's actually really funny because you mentioned Reacher. I literally just started watching that maybe about a week and a half ago. Really good show. I was actually
Yeah.
really kind of surprised.
hmm and the guy in it portrays Reacher so well. I haven't read any of the books, but listening to the community behind it going, yeah, Reacher's this big guy, and you know, I know Tom Cruise played him in a movie, and I haven't watched the movie, so I can't compare. But people are saying that the guy who plays Reacher in the TV show is much more genuine to the character in the book, and so yeah, maybe I'll watch the movie one of the days.
And the guy who plays, I don't know his name in real life, but he is an absolute beast of a man. Like he is just, it's
Yeah,
incredible. Like I said, I don't have any like real life comparisons, like kind of thing, because you look at somebody like movie techniques and tricks and stuff like that. Oftentimes they make people either look bigger than they actually are in real life. Like I think Tom Cruise, he's not that big of a guy in real life. Um, so he oftentimes was shown to be wearing like platform shoes to make himself look taller and stuff like that. But based on what I've seen around this guy, like he is a legitimate like hulk of a person.
yeah, yeah. And in season 1 compared to season 2, he was much bigger in season 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
you
the
could tell
season
he
three
put
is
in a
meant to
lot
be
of.
even,
So,
yeah, and in season three is meant to be even bigger than he is in season two.
holy smokes, how do you get bigger?
Now, I don't know if he's doing that for the show to portray his character better, or if that's just his regular workout and he's just genuinely getting bigger. But yeah, if that's for the show, then that's dedication.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine that they would have to incentivize him greatly to be able not to only be in that great a shape, but to maintain that all throughout the time of recording. Like that would be
Hmm.
a huge commitment.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely.
what about music? Do you have any particular styles of music that you like?
Um, I'm versatile. I don't really listen to much music, but I grew up with my uncle listening to heavy metal, like Iron Maiden, and such, from around the world. And so there's a lot of their music that I've listened to over the years. Then pop music. Yeah, if it's a catchy tune, then I'll listen to it.
So I don't know if you fell into this phenomena as well, but I've got two small children myself, both of them under 3 years old, and especially when they're younger, you find yourself listening to a lot of the things that they listen to, or a lot of things that they'll at least be entertained by, and it's really sad to say, but a lot of it you kind of get captured by. Have you kind
Hmm.
of fallen into that over the years?
I did. Baby Shark comes to mind. Um, and then you get to a point where you've heard it so much that you try to deafen yourself to it. Selective hearing becomes a big thing that you learn when you've got kids, and yeah. And then the worst part is then the TV shows are played two or three times in the
Ralph
same
Family
day, the
Jonah
same
donated
episode. So you watch them on the
$1.99 through
morning before
Super
the kids
Chat.
go to school, and then
BDD Chiefs the Eagles.
if it's on the weekend, then they're replayed again on the afternoon, and then again on the evening, and they have to watch the same episode even though they've already seen it all three times. So then, yeah, selective hearing and selective sight becomes a definite thing.
I understand exactly what you're saying. Like I said, my eldest is 3, and she's getting into things like Sesame Street and all the various different kinds of Miss Rachel's and stuff that's out there right now. And yeah, it's one of those where I just somehow, and I didn't even do this voluntarily. It's just starting to happen. It's just going in the background, and I'm not even aware that it's even on, kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like if my wife goes
but
on and
then
turns it on, it's just there, and I didn't even realize she turned on the TV.
yeah, yeah, and then sometimes something said on the wherever they're watching that you collar onto because now you're listening to it with your, as an adult, and you realize that a lot of the cartoon stuff is actually also adult related. And you click on your kid still watching and oblivious to what has happened.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So we established that you've listened to music, or that you listen to heavy metal, and that you watch movies, and you started watching Stranger Things with your kids. Um, what's one of the strangest or oddest movies that you've come across in your time?
A movie called The Terrifier about a clown that is a serial killer.
Oh, okay.
Um, Very gruesome. So if you're known to gruesome movies, don't bother watching that one because it's worse than Saw.
Oh wow, that's that's really bad. Whew.
Yeah.
For anybody who has not seen that movie, that movie gets really graphic. The Saw series. So yeah, if you're saying that it's worse than Saw, wow, that's an accomplishment. I always give the reference to a Star Wars movie that was made. It wasn't technically a movie; it was actually just made for TV. But it was called Star Wars Holiday Special. I don't know if you're at all into sci-fi or anything like that.
Oh yeah, I love Star Wars. Grew up with that as a kid.
Same
The
here.
original, the originals, not the remakes. I'm more of a the only one that I look at and put with the originals as um rating with them is Rogue One.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, the new three that they did, that was good, but yeah, I felt the originals, you can't beat them.
So yeah, I'm right there with you. I was a 4, 5, and 6 guy. Still am, my whole life. And after 7, 8, and 9, I just I stopped. I had to stop. I got so disheartened with the entire franchise at that point. But I have heard very similar things about Rogue One. I've heard about Mandalorian and all that stuff. So it's one of those that especially my brother-in-law, he's a huge Mandalorian fan. So it's one of those that I'm tempted to kind of dive back into it and check it out, but I don't know. I'm so worried about being disappointed.
Yeah, the Mandalorians I haven't watched. I've heard about them. I've watched. There was a short one day where Luke Skywalker comes in on Mandalorian, and I watched that, and I was like, okay, maybe I should watch it because it was the old Skywalker, young, and I know he's not in it all the way through, but yeah, that got my interest. Rogue One, I definitely recommend that you watch that one. It's definitely worth watching. It ties the original in with the franchise, explaining how, when they go, a lot of people lost their lives getting these plans. Well, that's what that one's about.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, you're not the only one who's told me about that. So I don't know. I might have to go and give it a try. I might have to just, buck up and just take a look. But
Yeah, definitely.
but have you ever heard of the holiday special?
No, no.
So I recommend watching it only if you're wanting to torture yourself for about an hour. It's when I tell you, Roy, it's one of the worst things ever to hit the Star Wars universe. It's terrible. And what's really wild about it is it came out. I think it came out shortly after 4, and it was a made for TV movie that came out in the late 70s, I think.
Hmm.
Maybe. Anyways, um, but it's got all the original actors from the original series. It's got Harrison Ford. It's got Mark Hamill. Oh my goodness, the guy who played Chewbacca was in it. Princess Leia. Why can't I remember her name off the top of my head? Anyways, not important. But it had all the original actors. It even had additional characters like B. Arthur from the Golden Girls. Like a whole bunch of like really star-studded crew. It's terrible, just absolutely terrible. Mark Hamill, like you see him on the screen, and he looks like he had his makeup painted on with a like a painting roller, like you'd use on the side of a house.
Oh, okay.
It's awful. So yeah, go if you want to torture yourself for an hour, go give it a check. But it's rough. It's really rough.
Well, someone pointed out that they just got done watching Spaceballs. I've watched that, so that makes that sound like it's an even much more fun movie to watch
Oh,
than this current one.
I love the movie Spaceballs, but that's intended to be a comedy. That was
Yeah,
like intentional,
yeah.
and it has that kind of comedic action. That movie there, there's literally about 10 or so minutes of Chewbacca's family just trilling at each other.
Okay.
It's that awful. Like, anyways, so so let's say for some reason you weren't able to make mods anymore, whether a computer meltdown or something along those lines. What would you do uh, outside of being able to make mods and maps?
And curl up and hide. I don't know because the every game I've played I've modded. Um, it's my escape from reality. Yeah, I'd probably go and save every penny I could to go and buy another computer so I could get back to modding.
So, would you say that you're more in love with the modding aspect than the actual game aspect, or
Yeah, definitely. I love playing the game. Don't get me wrong. Giants have done a phenomenal job with 25. But if Giants editor could relay how much time is spent within that, like Steam does with Farm Sim, I could guarantee there'd be far more hours within the editor than there would be in the actual game, and I can clock up a couple of thousand hours in the game.
Oh wow. So you're like really into the modding aspect. It's not even a like a, based on how you're describing it, it's not even like a comparison. Like if you're clocking in that many hours of game time, and you're saying you're clocking in even more in editing time, then that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, 8 months around about to make a map, uh, and you're looking at around about 10 to 12 hours a day, um, 7 days a week.
Wow.
You know, yeah,
So it's not even really a love; it's a love and passion when you're on there and doing this kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah. Which would equate to like around about what 30 something, 3,000, 3,500 hours in the editor per map.
Wow, that's impressive. But you know what? Let me say this real quick before we continue and move on. After hearing that stat, and I've heard others, specifically one person in particular that comes to mind, it was Silver Eagle, said that he spent over a year doing his map on FS22. Um, but you putting into perspectives like that, let me offer a sincere thank you for all the work that you do, because what you do allows us within the community to be able to have an even fuller dynamic of fun with the game itself. So let me bare minimum offer you that as a quote unquote payment for all the labor that you put into it. It's that's really highly impressive and very selfless of yourself as well.
Thank you. You know, I make them for myself, so I may as well release them to the community and let them enjoy them as well.
Well, and that
Um,
was going to lead into my next question: is that when you're modding, you just stated that you're really more doing it for yourself. So I would infer from that that when you're creating your maps, that it's a very kind of personal experience as well. You're trying to find things that are really going to satisfy yourself first and foremost. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's everything is built to my specifications of how I like to play the game. Um, I like customization within a map. I like tight yards, tight lanes. I'm more small fields compared to Riverview. Riverview has large fields, and I'd rather have some of them fields being half of what they are. But Riverview was my very first map, so it's it has to stay up there as being my most loved map because it's gone through every iteration of Farm Sim since 2011.
Which that by itself is highly impressive, to have something with that much staying power, not only with yourself but within the community itself. Because I always uh, talk to people behind the scenes and whatnot, and I always hear really really good things about your map. One person in particular I can think of is Ken Adlam, who's a part of my members group, and he was playing on Riverview for a very long time before 22 rolled into 25. And yeah, he said nothing but great stuff about it. So, and after doing the map tour and stuff from 25 here recently, just a few days ago, I can say with personal experience that it's an absolutely lovely map, and just makes me that much more excited to see, when Maypole comes out, and all the other ones that have been announced up until this point.
Hmm. Yeah,
So would you
and
say? Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, as them being brought into the game, you're remembering them from 22. So as they're being ported in, you start seeing the changes just from the graphic side of things with 25, and then you start making the changes to bring the map up to date with 25 standards, whilst also trying to offer something new to the map. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wild in how just a small graphical shift, like from 22 to 25, can really influence the quote unquote the vibe that you get with a map. Like I said, I loved Riverview, what little experience I had with it, I did the tours and the updates and stuff like that. But it was one of those where I was really uh, like taken aback, remembering what I experienced in 22, where it was where I really had the first kind of deep dive into your maps and your content specifically, to now being on the kind of second iteration for myself, having something that kind of I can look back on and be like, wow, I remember this from last year's game, and looking at this year, it's Riverview. It is the game, or is the map, but it's something like there's something special beyond what was already here. And yeah, it's one of those where, like I said, I can't speak highly enough of Riverview personally, and like I said, I'm just looking forward to it personally. Your other iterations of maps.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I've burnt myself out doing it. Um, I burnt myself out in 22 before, while I was working on Ebony Island, and um, I ended up completely switching off from farm sim. Uh, took months to get back into doing anything, and in the end, I stumbled across Missy B streaming, working on her map for 22 Riverside, and I watched her working on that map, and then I started getting that itch for Giants Editor again, and um, then I met the Shanty Boys, and we did a challenge on Maypole together. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's amazing. And really glad that you found your way back to the community. You said you took a hiatus for a few months. I'm sure that it's easy to kind of quote unquote walk away from this kind of job, quote unquote, because it's not something that you are easily recognized for outside of this community that we're in. But it's not like it's something where you're going to be making a ton of money or getting a whole bunch of accolades or anything like that. So it's something that it's a labor of love that you get into it, but I could also very much see that it's something that you could very easily get burned out on. So again, very, very glad that you were able to find your way back.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, for all the modders out there who do what they do, um, the amount of time that they put into it, sometimes it can be quite harsh with some of the community members, how they rant on about certain things, but um, you just have to look past all of that, look forward, and keep moving, and grow a thick skin, or just completely disconnect from the social media side of things, and just focus on your work. Um, we've all of us as modders have had the good and the bad side of the community, but on a whole, I think the farm sim community is one of the best communities out there, and I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of the people within the community in person, and yeah, it's been twice now, and it's been fantastic.
Well, and you bringing that up actually kind of ties into the whole reason why I started this series in the first place. I don't even think you and I discussed this kind of in the background, but the whole reason I did this series is because of the community that we exist in. There are those elements that can be, toxic, and I wanted to be able to introduce that kind of personal side of people to make it to where hopefully people might take a second breath before they start kind of raging out against this thing or that thing, kind of thing, to just kind of humanize it and show, the people behind the scenes, like yourself. You have your YouTube channel and stuff, but it's there's other modders out there that don't, and they don't present themselves, openly to the community, besides through their work. So it's one of those that I wanted to be able to kind of bring the human element into it, and maybe naive or something, but that was the whole goal behind this show. So I'm glad that yourself and hopefully others within the modding community will come onto the show to be able to further that cause.
I hope so. And you're doing a fantastic job, and I think there's a lot of modders out there who would like to express themselves, and as you said, humanize themselves, because we're not robots. We don't just sit here chugging away at maps or mods all day long. We have a life outside of farm sim, and sometimes the pressures to get something out can be overwhelming, and you have to take that step back and look at your life and go, hang on, it's not a job, it's not a chore. This is something I enjoy doing. I do it as a hobby, not as a job. And then otherwise you burn yourself out, and then you're like me back in 22, where you're looking at anything but farm sim related stuff.
Yeah, and then we as a community are poorer for the experience. So it's um, one of those that, like I said, I wanted to do this show is to one humanize, to hopefully lessen that kind of blowback that the community gets when something may or may not happen the way that people expect it to, and then we end up losing giants like yourself within, especially within the modding community, um, that just ultimately at the end leaves us all poorer for the experience. So it's one of those that yeah, been an absolute blast so far, and like I said, just grateful for content creators like yourself, who put in all this effort and you know tireless hours, to bring us something that we get to experience for nothing. So it's absolutely fantastic. So
Oh, you're more than welcome.
has it been a dream, or would you say that it's been a dream of yours to be a modder? Like, because you had mentioned that you spent all this time, working on maps, thousands of hours, just chugging away on a single map. Would you say it's a dream of yours to actually be a modder?
No, I never set out for it to be a dream. It was always just something I enjoyed doing. It was my escape. um you know uh, the I I suffer with depression, so I my escape is the editor. um and for that, it keeps me focused, keeps me moving forward, and entertained. And then watching other people enjoying what I've put out then makes it so much more worth it. And you get feedback by watching them. They might do something, they might not even say a word about it. They might do something and you go, oh yeah, I could make a little change there that would make that a little bit easier, or a bit more difficult, or more accessible. And that's what I look for when I'm watching anybody playing. And while I'm enjoying watching what they're doing, I'm also looking for ways that I could improve certain things.
So, what would you say are things that you don't see yourself as being very good at, but others, whether it's in the community, real life, whatever it may be, would wholeheartedly disagree with you with?
uh, I'm not one for putting too much detail in my maps. Apparently, um, so I've been told, I don't like, when I look at the community, I put Auction David right at the very top of mod mapping, of making maps. And I look at him and go, if anybody wants to be on that level, they have to push themselves to that level. Um, whether you enjoy an Auction David map or not, that's the goal that every map maker, in my opinion, should be aiming for. Um, I don't see myself on that level. I never have. I've always seen myself as a mediocre modder, and I've been told by other people, going, no, 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 you're one of the best. I don't look at myself as like that. But as the saying goes, beauty is within the beholder. And I, yeah, I'm more of a perfectionist. I see a tuft of grass out of place, and I have to go and change it and fix it.
Well, if my 2 cents, leads to anything, I've always kind of compartmentalized map makers specifically. And what I mean by that is, like you mentioned, Oxygen David. Yeah, absolutely brilliant map maker. He makes absolutely lovely maps. And if you're looking for that kind of realistic kind of style, yes, I think that he's absolutely one of the tops. There's other map makers out there like a Poor Boy or Celebuki, who I think their strengths lie in the kind of gameplay mechanics behind the map, where there's the kind of productions aspect and stuff like that. To where you, I would put you in the category of one of the, if not the best, uh, customization map makers, bar none. You make a map to where it's so able to be customized to anybody's level of you know level of gameplay acumen that I don't think there's anybody in the same league. And then on top of that, you also make something that's absolutely gorgeous to look at, and it's just a pleasure to play on. So yeah, like I said, it's one of those. If my 2 cents counts for anything, yeah, I would definitely put you at the top of your category, and you would certainly be amongst the pinnacle of map makers up there.
Thank you. Um, and yeah, as you said, there's other map makers out there who are really good at their work and delve into different aspects. I think one of the areas that I found really interesting to delve into in 22 was production side, something I'd never delved into, and then customizing the production so it tied all the productions together in some kind of way. Like the bakery, I couldn't stand that you just took flour to the bakery and you could make bread. So I made it that you had to make dough, but then you needed yeast. So you needed the sugar factory because yeast is a byproduct of sugar processing. So it started tying all the productions together. And I know some people be like, but I just want to make bread. I don't want to own the sugar factory. But in 25, we now have the ability to buy stuff from the warehouse, which is something I'll have to look into for a review. So you can buy the new fill types that I've added from the warehouse, so you don't have to own the productions for that, for them to be able to make certain productions.
Yeah, which that also leads into the like greater dynamics that you are starting to offer on your maps are the whole productions tie-ins. Again, it's just another, a feather in your cap kind of thing. So, yeah, when it's all said and done, it's I would be one of those people who would disagree with you. Just you say that you're mediocre, I would disagree personally. But again, my 2 cents.
Yeah, yeah, everybody's entitled to their opinions, but uh, just a quick answer for Ken. Yes, after I've released Glenleithen, which will be my final map there, port over, I'll start looking at making a new map.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, and we're gonna get to the whole any future plans and all that stuff later on in the show. Um, so what kind of things would you say kind of inspires you? Again, we're in the section that's more of the personal aspect, so not necessarily related to to your channel, to your mods, or anything like that. But what kind of things inspire you and motivate you?
Um, when I watch people playing, um, or sometimes it can be watching a real life farming, something to do with real life, but normally it's just watching somebody play and seeing that the way that they play compared to the way that I play, and trying to mix those two combinations together to try and make something that is unique to me and to that particular person in question, and hoping that the rest of the community that play like that will also find that interesting as well for themselves. I mean, there's been a lot of because as things go, Australians tend to stick with the Australian maps, Americans tend to stick with the American maps because it's kind of alien to go outside of that because UK is tight and everything, hedges everywhere. As Vanessa said, she loves the hedges, not. Um, there's a lot of things to collide into. And so for me, watching somebody drive down the road with a 30-foot header attached to the combine, that's alien to me. But it happens. People do it. And um, so trying to incorporate certain things into the maps where possible is a unique challenge, and then seeing more people from around the world from different continents playing on the map and enjoying it then gives me motivation to keep pressing away at that and pushing myself to whole new levels.
I gotcha. That's yeah. That would definitely I know would jazz me up to hear kind of see and hear feedback like that. I could see that definitely be kind of a motivating factor. Um,
Hmm.
what's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
That I'm human. I don't know. Probably that um, I'm approachable. Probably that
Okay.
I'm not the kind. I'm not the person who, if you turn around and go, "Yeah, your map sucks, and I can't do this." I'm not somebody who's going to go, "Well, don't play it then." I'm going to want to know why is it unplayable to you? What makes it? What puts you off from playing the map?
So would you say that if somebody were to approach you, whether it's kind of negatively or positively, however they approached you, and they presented you with something, it's like, oh well, hey, this is something I feel that you could work on for your map, you could fix or blah, blah, whatever the case may be. Would you actually use that as a kind of consideration in order to like a takeaway almost?
Uh, yeah, I've often listened to people within the community and or watched seen people do certain things within the community and gone, that's a good idea. I'll think about it. It not doesn't necessarily mean it will happen, but I'll take it into consideration and play around with the concept and if I like it, then it makes it in. If I don't like it, then it's pushed to one side and maybe forgot or maybe brought in a different way and yeah, it's it's that aspect of changing things up to suit my playstyle whilst also helping the community enjoy what I put out.
And what would you say would be one of the biggest things that people have brought to you that you're like, ooh, you know what, I ought to consider doing something about that?
Um, the farmer dad from the Monkey Show, he wanted a map that was small fields, and back in the day, the only map I ever worked on was Riverview. I'd done other maps, but I'd never released them. I'd never finished them, and so Riverview up until 2017 was the only map. And then I started working on Maypole, and him being from Ireland, Maypole became an Irish-based map, and with real world terrain data and everything. And um, when I made that, and the the feedback that Maypole's um, been receiving over the years, it was made in 2017 for 2019, and then ported over every game until now, and which will be ported over in 25. But yeah, the Maypole's the most played of out of all of my maps is the most downloaded and played map, which is why it's been, the questions of some people have been like, why, if Maypole was your most popular map, why didn't you bring that one out first? Because it wasn't about popularity, it was about releasing them in the order that I made them.
Okay.
So they're all showing their equal amount of love as opposed to fan favorites.
Well, no, and that makes absolute sense. And it's almost like a homage to like you as a creator, but also kind of what you built your whole quote unquote career around within the farm sim community. You're kind of sticking to like the order, kind of thing. So that's actually rather admirable. To show it's like, you know what, hey, I'm gonna work on this one first because this is the one that's been like the staple, and therefore it's gonna be like boom, 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 and just kind of go from there. I like that. That's really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I Go on.
oh, I was gonna ask, do you have any pets?
I do. I have one dog. We did have guinea pigs, but yeah, after they went, we just ended up with just the dog, and she she's a big baby. Um,
They all tend to be.
yeah, well, she was my mom was on a Facebook group, and they was trying to get rid of this staff, and staffs have a bad reputation. especially in the UK. I don't know about over in the States. Um, and my mum was like, she's a bait dog, which basically, she was used to try and um, encourage the fighting dogs to become more aggressive. And I was like, "Oh, I've got kids, I don't know." And so I had her for one day in the house, and she would push, turn her front legs in towards each other, and then bend forward, try and show off all her muscle and be intimidating. But you'd see her puppy eyes. She'd give you those puppy eyes and wagging her tail. And on the night, she ran upstairs and she was licking the kids' hands or feet if they was hanging out the bed. And as soon as they pulled them in, she was like, "Yeah, I'm consent. I'm fine. Let's go." And she's never growled or snapped at the kids. She's been a really loyal, probably more loyal than a dog that was brought up from a puppy that you bought from an owner who was breeding them, because she's more content and more, you saved my life rather than you just brought me up. And
Oh,
yeah, she's definitely part of the family.
that's lovely. Pets just offer something uh, to the family dynamic that it's unquestionable that they have their place within the family and they're extremely special. You can't just like interchangeably put them in and out. They always grow like their own little part of
Yeah,
it.
as the saying goes, you can't. A puppy isn't just a birthday present; it's for life.
Yes, exactly. So, who would you consider to be your favorite creator outside of the community of Farm Sim?
Um, as in videos or modding.
Whether it's modding, whether it's videos on YouTube, whatever the case may be. Like, is there somebody
Um,
that kind of sticks out to you just outside of the world of Farm Sim?
yeah, Colonel Failure. I like watching a lot of his content, especially Transport Fever.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
Um, and modding wise, I they don't do content on YouTube or Twitch or anything like that, but it'd be Pirates Ahoy. That's where I practically began my delving into realistically into full on modding.
Okay. And then, if you could meet any three people, whether currently alive or in history, who would they be and why?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Um, Never really thought about it, but
So the reason that I asked this question, and I've been really trying to ask it with every one of my interviews here lately, is it offers a window of who people would find important to them. So it's just kind of one of those almost psychological questions to just kind of let us know, you know, who it is that you value in the world, kind of thing.
it probably top of the list would probably be a family member in particular. Um, to see, if what I'm doing is acceptable in his eyes. The others would probably be oof, uh, Einstein. Find out what made him think of the things that he did, uh, and why he thought the concepts would work, even when people completely pushed his ideas to one side and looked at him as a weirdo kind of figure. And then the next one would probably be an artist, um, because they see something in their work that maybe other people don't, and I think that's the same for map makers and modders in general. When they're putting something together, they see a lot of things that other people within the community don't necessarily see.
I gotcha.
and see how what I do compares to how they think and how that all blends in.
Okay.
Maybe we're not so different in some ways.
No, absolutely. So, who would you consider to be your favorite creator inside the farm sim community? Whether modder, YouTuber, whatever the case may be.
YouTube, it would be um, the average Viking I watch mostly. Um, or not YouTube, but for content, for streaming or videos, would be the average Viking. Modding, I think the person that inspired me the most was Alien Jim
Absolutely, yeah.
because because he started the whole I'm going to make a map customizable to the player. And then he took that to a whole new level in 2019 when he grasped onto um, the whole concept of the placeable system, whereas a lot of like myself, the original modders were finding it maybe a bit more difficult, the transition between this is a farm, you've got what you've got, deal with it, to this is a placeable, you can demolish your farm and make it how you want. Alien Jim went, here's no man's land, do what you want.
Yeah, that's definitely somebody to take inspiration from. Alien Jim did some amazing work. Um, yeah, absolutely. Um, so, what was your first paying job?
Uh, I worked on a farm. Well, it was a rescue centre based around a farm, taking in farm animals and rehousing them. Whether it was because the farm had closed down or it was because they were too old and the farmer didn't want to have them um, butchered, so they was then sent off to basically a rehab, if you like, where they'd either live out their days, or they'd move on to another farm later down the line. Um, and yeah, we had a lot of sheep. We had one cow, a few pigs. We had wolves. We had a lot of birds of prey. So they was fascinating to watch. Um, I found them more fascinating than the actual farm animals, to be honest.
Wow, that's actually really incredible because I mean, just the whole like rehoming aspect. That's one that's a very noble thing, but then you also at the same time you were able to kind of see a lot of creatures that you wouldn't normally get to see. You mentioned wolves and birds of prey and stuff like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and they from um, all different species of birds and from around the world as well. There wasn't just UK based birds. So yeah, it was really nice.
Okay. So, if you had never discovered Farming Simulator for one reason or another, what do you think? Which game would have taken its place with the whole modding aspect that you're so deep into?
Most likely it'd have been Age of Sail kind of game. Um, I love that era. Uh, I like the tall ships. I like the uh, the fact that it was the tactics that would have to be used to take over a ship, not necessarily sink it. It was um, a lot more interesting, and and I loved working with a group of people on a mod for Age of Pirates back in the day.
Okay. And where would you say that your passion for Farming Simulator came from? Because you said you've been doing this since about 2011. Um, you came across it, but is there something that kind of predated it that just kind of made it feel more like integratable into your everyday life?
I think for like most people coming into the franchise who might not necessarily have worked on a farm, it was the machinery. Just being, like flight sim, and that they just want to fly a plane. Um, just so whether it's for the credibility to say yes, I can fly a 747 or a Concorde or whatever flight type of plane that they find fascinating. For me, I think it was that. And I started off with the big equipment. Being that person who drove down the road with a 20-foot header attached to the front of my combine. So now, I try and keep it within what would be the UK standards of the rules of the road. But yeah, I've been that person, and um, larger capacities, cheesy equipment, if you like. But you grow out of it, or some of us grow out of it, some of us grow into it more. It's just down to your play style, and that's what I love about Farm Sim. There's so many ways to play the game. There's no right or wrong way of playing it. Well, I might not agree with larger capacities. Doesn't mean that it's wrong and that you shouldn't do it. If that's your preference, then so be it. It's not affecting me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing just how versatile this game is. And with a map maker like yourself, you exemplar you oh goodness, I can't remember the word off the top of my head. You really show off just how versatile the maps can be, but then on top of that, the game itself. Like it's you play into the playing style of the game very well, and which is why I was saying earlier, I'd put you in with the upper echelon of all creators, is because of that customizable perspective that you bring to your maps. And the one thing I'll say in regards to your maps as compared to like an Alien Jim, who you kind of attribute to your kind of looking up to, when it comes to like a Alien Jim map, like No Man's Land is a perfect example. It's an amazing map. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous map, and it does have that kind of customizable feel to it. But it also doesn't feel established, if that makes sense. So there's like you're basically almost starting with from scratch. But what's nice about your maps is you start with something. You've got established farms, you've got areas in which you can build up or take over and stuff like that. But then on top of it, you're able to have a certain level of equipment if you do like a new farmer mode and stuff like that. So unlike the No Man's Land, you're starting with very old and rugged equipment and whatnot, to where your maps you can really kind of have something established, or you can really kind of expand out and do like a start from scratch or farm manager mode and have less to start out with. But then the map itself is still just as customizable as a No Man's Land, which is like that's like the next level, in my opinion, to Alien Gyms. It's the step above it, if that makes sense.
hmm Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think what I love about Alien Jim is he took a concept, he made it his thing, and that inspired me to look at my own work and go, well, yeah, I want to do that. I mean, I I'd stumbled over cuttable hedges in 2017, and I put them in on my map for review, and then I released it to the public in 22, and I didn't know there was Alien Jim's cuttable hedges. They wasn't from Alien Jim that, um, but Alien Jim was like, those look familiar, and I'm like, oh no, please don't tell me they're yours. And but I messaged Alien Jim on Facebook, and he was like, yeah, you can use them. Just give me credit, and I can't appreciate that. That just that on itself was awesome, and allowed me to carry on making the map that I wanted to make. Had he gone, no, you can't do that, I'd have had to come up with another format, and which may have gone down the lines of, well, console players, sorry, but you won't be able to have the map because the slot count will be too high, and have it all as placeable hedges, in which I know Action David has done with his map on Calmston. Um, but I don't believe it's every hedge. I don't know. I haven't looked at the map, but yeah, it's it's a difficult one. But yeah, it's I I think I took a lot of inspiration from Alien Gym.
And that's the one thing I've really admired about the community that we all exist in is that it really seems like everybody is so willing to not only, produce something for themselves and for the rest of the community, but they're so willing to be like, yeah, absolutely, use this concept or use this, mod or use this thing here that they just want the best to come out for the game rather than be, selfish and be like, no, 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 don't use this, don't do that. I spearheaded this is my thing, and tough luck for everybody else kind of thing. It does seem like people are very willing to work together to be a part of the community rather than kind of splitting away from it and only worrying about the notoriety for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I think the community in general is one of the best communities out there. If um, you put a bunch of modders together, and they may create something amazing, or they may go and learn from each other and then go off and do their own things. But the chances are they may collaborate and make something together.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and 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 there in itself opens so many doors. And a lot of the modding groups that are out there are from modders coming together and working with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really special what we have going here in the community, and yeah, I couldn't be prouder to be a part of it. Um, so last question for this segment here before we move on to general Q&A from the rest of the group. Uh, you'd mentioned that the thing that kind of brought you into the farm sim community was the machinery. You were mentioning how you were the one who would go down the road with the 30-foot headers on a UK style map and stuff like that originally. Does that kind of love translate into like real life machinery, or like do you at all have a passion for like automobiles or anything like that?
I can't stand cars. I when I left school, I was like, you know what? I don't want a four-wheel vehicle. I'd rather have a push bike or a motorbike. You know, I'd rather be on two wheels than four wheels. My dad was like, you need a car. You should get a car. Don't I've seen you on a push bike, and you you'd be lethal on a motorbike. And but no, I never. I started driving. At the time, I was playing Formula One '97. I was sitting inside a friend's house, and his dad answered the door, and this guy walked in, and he was watching me racing around this. I think it was Hockenheim circuit, and he went, "How old is he?" And he was like, "Oh, he's 18 now." And he goes, "Has he ever driven a car?" And he went, "No, he doesn't have a license." And little did I know he was a driving instructor, and he was like, you know, game to get his provisional license, and I'll start teaching him. And the first day I got in his car, he was like, "You before you even turn that key to start the engine, this is now a race car. Don't try and overtake the buses. Stay in your lane, and I'll tell you when you can overtake." And I'm like, "Fair enough." And three lessons, and he was like, "You know what? I think you could go and take your lesson, and you'd pass easily." And I never took that lesson. Never intended to actually do any driving. It was just a friend had gone. Would you like to try it?
Oh, that's incredible. Um, so you're more into motorcycles. If money wasn't an object, what would you say would
Hmm.
be your dream bike to have?
Um, uh, Probably a Kawasaki. I wouldn't go above a 150 though.
Okay.
You know, I yeah, and it'd probably be an old-fashioned Kawasaki rather than one of the modern.
Okay. Now, is that here in the States? I think that's referred to like as a crotch rocket. I don't know if it's similar terminology over where you're at. But are you familiar with that term?
No.
So I guess I'm not familiar with motorcycles personally. So the way that I think of a Kawasaki, at least over here when I see them, it's the style of motorbike where instead of like the Harley Davidsons, where it's the big big fat tires and all that stuff, it's the one where you are more kind of leaned forward, almost like streamlined kind of racing bike. Is that kind of the style we're talking about? Or is it more
Um,
like a cruiser style?
More like a cruiser.
Cruiser, okay. Okay, so let's see. So
As much as I love racing, I wouldn't race around on a motorbike.
well, especially with all the traffic and stuff like that. I've mentioned to you before this, before we started this show. I've never been to the UK, but being as such tight spaces, tight lanes and stuff like that, I would think that would be very intimidating to be on a motorcycle while it's also at the same time kind of freeing because you're able to, utilize less space than most other vehicles. That also means that there's less space for the other vehicles to be.
I think with motorcycles, the fascination is you're you're vulnerable. You're at one with nature. You're open to all the elements, and whether you would want to ride in snow, which you wouldn't want to on a motorcycle, ideally, but you're open to all the elements, and therefore you can take in things that you might necessarily miss when you're in a car or a four-wheel vehicle.
I get you there. And I had a friend that used to live with us a long time ago, and he was like that was his thing was motorcycles. And I used to be so angry with him all the time because down here in Florida, it rains a lot, especially during like the spring and early summer. There's tons of rain all the time. And he had, we call it a crotch rocket, but again, it's one of those like kind of racing style bikes.
Hmm.
And he would always call me, after he was done with work. And he's like, "Hey, it's raining. Can you come pick me up?" And at the time, I had a pickup truck. So we had to lift this, 600-pound motorbike onto the back of in the bed of my pickup truck, and I'd be driving him around, and I'd always, get so angry with him. It's like, dude, I'm having to come pick you up almost daily. Why don't you just get a car? He's like, if you don't understand, you'll never understand. And
Yeah,
that's how he always explained it to me. It's like, if you don't understand, there's nothing I can tell you that's going to get you to get it.
yeah.
All right, so that is the end of our first segment, and that's going to lead us to taking a look at the chat there and seeing what kind of questions we have from there. So let's go ahead and start with Dust Bunny. Thank you so very much for sending me over these questions. I greatly, greatly appreciate them. She's been aggregating them in the background so as to make them easy to find. So again, thank you, Dust Bunny, so very, very much. First question
Thank you,
comes
just one.
from Ken Adlam says, I have two questions for you. Number one, why is there no water points on the map?
Um, because you can take water free from the river. If you go by the church, there's a little lane that goes down there. You can. That's a fill point for you. But the whole of the river you can take water from. Same with just outside your farm before you get to the bridge, turn left, and just before the forestry area, basically opposite the entrance to whatever field number there is, 15 or so. There's a pickup point there that you can collect water from.
Okay. And the second question is does the grass still grow fast on both maps?
The grass grows the same as base game.
Okay. Let's see. The next question we have is from Farming with Outlaw Ag. By the way, thank you, Ken, for sending in your question. Greatly appreciate it. Farming with
Yep.
Outlaw Ag, thank you for yours. Says, you planning on bringing any other maps to FS25, Roy?
Maypole, followed by Ebony Island, then Glenleith, and sadly, combined counties won't be one unless Giants up their limit or I come up with a new concept to make that map work. due to limitations within FarmSim 25. And then after that, if Combined Counties doesn't come, it'll be a new map for 25.
I gotcha. And a couple of replies back from Dust Bunny to you specifically saying Maypole was Mr. BDD's favorite Mr. Cavalier Roy, and it was.
So
Absolutely
many
was.
people have said that. So many people have said that Maypole was their best favorite map.
So what I absolutely adored about it personally was, like I said, is the customization of it. That's what kind of introduced me to you and your style of map making. Because I kind of breezed past, Riverview when it first released. I did the tour for it, but I kind of just breezed by it without really understanding like the deep dive within it. But Maypole, when I kind of looked at the terrain and the kind of general layout of it, I was like, okay, this is something I can get behind. And then I did the Let's Play series, and that's when you and I got introduced to each other. Was when I was doing that series, and
Mhm.
that's when I really kind of grew into the appreciation of your style that you have. And I was like, this is something special, and I can't speak any more highly of it.
Thank you. Now, Maypole's definitely one of those maps that, if you've played it, you'll probably never forget it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. See, next question comes from Rail Fanning Jonah. Jonah, thank you so much for your question. Says, if you could create one more mod, what would it be?
Another map. Probably. I have been asked if I'd do an American map, so probably would be an American map. And
Ooh,
it'd probably be based in Texas.
ooh, okay, okay. I tell you what, you just got me really excited there, Roy.
And
I really hope that's something that comes.
and anyone who knows me knows that I don't do flat maps, so we would have undulation within the fields, not to the extent of Maple, but you would have undulations within the fields and the terrain itself.
So it's funny you mentioned that because the one map I can think off the top of my head for 22 was that Big Flats, Texas. And
Hmm.
it was a good map, don't get me wrong, but that was the one thing that I personally don't like about maps is that when they're just flat. And yeah, that was the one big thing about that map that I was like, man, this is just too flat. I like its kind of design. I like how things are kind of generally laid out, but it's flat and I just can't work my way around that. So it's heartening to hear that if you were to undertake an American map, that it would have, not to the degree of undulations that, some of your other maps have, but, at least it's not, flat.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's see.
definitely. And there's everything's there to make an American map thanks to Giants with what they've brought into the game. So it is very much a doable thing.
Absolutely. Again, Jonah, thank you for your question. And we got one more question from Ken Adlam. He says, I love that farm production system on the Start Farm of Riverview. I'm wondering if that can sell methane at the service station.
No, it can't. The service station is just a buy point rather than a sell point as well. Um,
Okay. And then one kind of follow up to that I have is that farm production going to come as a standalone mod like it was in
it is.
22?
It's been with Giants since after Christmas, so since
Oh,
last month, or just before last month actually. So yeah, it's coming. Originally, the map Riverview had two dependent mods. It had the animal mod that I done because I added gates to the pastures because they didn't come with gates, and people were like, "Well, you need to go in there and you need to roll the fields to get the grass to regrow." Because once the grass is eaten by the animals, that's it. It's gone. You have to then replant it, or you make a field in there. Um, so I added gates in so you could go and do that rather than throwing your equipment over the fence. And then obviously increase the capacities. And then Farm Productions was the second mod. And when I sent Riverview in initially for its testing, I hadn't changed it and put them as built-in mods for the map. They were still required, and Giants were like, you need to give us the required mods as well.
I gotcha. And yeah, that's another thing that I absolutely adore about your maps as well is the fact that the animal pens, kind of reflect the size and scope of, or the animals reflect the size and scope of the pastures and stuff that they actually exist in. Because you'll get those maps where you got these, really large pastures, but it's kind of base game values kind of thing.
Yeah.
But your maps, like you can have 2,000 sheep in one pasture, and it's like that's awesome. And it just makes it just infinitely easier. As long as you have the product going in to sustain them, then you've got a ton of product coming out of it. And that's what I loved about Maple as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And the one feature I've always said that I've missed is um, the feeling of your growing your farm. Back in 2017 and prior to that, as your animal or your herd grew, your capacity for your barn would grow with what food, the amount of food that they could hold. And with 2019 and above, we lost that. It became this is how much your barn can hold, and so therefore it was easy to go. Oh, I only need X amount of fields to sustain uh, the maximum capacity of this barn. Whereas you never had a max that in 2017. If you had 12 cows, then you only could feed 12 cows for 3 days or 6 days. Um, but if they gave birth before then, that capacity would increase. And I miss that concept because you never knew exactly how much you needed, and therefore you expanded your farm as you needed to expand it.
I gotcha. Okay. All right, so that's the end of the questions from the chat. So again, Dust Bunny and everybody who asked questions, thank you so very, very much. Greatly appreciate every one of you. Now we're going to
Yep,
move on
thank
to
you.
our second segment, and this one's called Meat and Potatoes, emphasis on potatoes. This is where we get to know you more as your creating side, your mods and your maps. So, first question that I have for you is what is the story behind your name, Cavalier Roy?
Nothing to do with farm sim. Funny enough, I started league racing, and that was the name that was given to me. Before farm sim at the time, I was known as Luke 159, um, and uh, I stuck with that name for many years. And then one day I was just like, you know what, I may as well go with Cavalier Roy because it's the name that I use in most other places. So therefore, it's only fitting that I use it within the farm sim community, and because a few people have been like, well, what name are you going by today? As a joke, because I'd be one name in a game, but my mod would be under a different name, Luke159. Gaming tag would be Jake974. Um, you know, and my Discord name would be something else, and um, so it was like, yeah, I'll just Cavalier Roy, and then it just puts everything into perspective that that's who I am. And Farmer Klein was when I released Riverview in 2022. He was like, who's this Cavalier Roy guy? Because the guy who released the map initially was Luke159, and I need to find this Cavalier Roy guy to find out if he's the same guy or is it a stolen map before he did his map review on it. And I can't be any more grateful for him to reaching out and confirming that I was actually the original author.
Oh, no,
So yeah.
that's actually a really cool story. But again, another reason why this is such a great community is that it sounded like he was looking out for you to make sure that your assets weren't taken. Because we actually just heard of something like that here recently, happening with people within the community that assets are getting taken and posted on those third party sites and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's you know again another reason why we live or exist within a great community.
Hmm.
So, kind of a part two to that question there. On your YouTube channel, you have the picture of the monkey. I have it
Yeah.
actually here on the title card. People can see my camera, my face, but they also see as the stand in, your image from YouTube. What's the story with the monkey?
Uh, the Monkey Show. I joined them back in 2017. One of the testers, Frido, was like, the guys over on the Monkey Show are planning on putting known as back then as Newbie Farm on their server, and Um, would you like to meet them, kind of thing? And I ended up jumping in their Discord and just sitting there being completely quiet, not talking, just listening to what they had to say. And then eventually I started talking, and and they did a lot of racing as well. So that fascinated me because more I love racing, and so I was taking part in racing, and I got to know everybody, and they welcomed me in with open arms, and that's how the Monkey Show came about. But the actual image, we did a charity stream one day for Ronald McDonald, and
Oh,
we used Flight Simulator X, where we flew around the world in propeller powered planes. And thank you. And yeah, we we kept the image. I just never removed it, and because of the Monkey Show name, it was like, well, it's fitting that we use a monkey as my logo. Before then, I think it used to be a toll ship that I had as my logo, uh, going back to the days when I worked on that pirate game.
okay. And you mentioned just how much time like goes into creating maps, creating mods, uh, and whatnot. It's up to thousands of hours of your own personal time. Does that leave you any time to do any other modding for other games out there? Is Farming Simulator the only thing that you make content for currently?
It is, but I've also helped other people within the farming community. Um, I've been in the Shanty Boys Discord and sat there watching them working on their stuff and gave my 2 cents when I felt was necessary. And they've gave theirs when they felt that it was necessary on my end. Um, they've learned things from me. I've learned things from them. And other people who they've been waiting for a mod for, especially in 25, like a line buying station, and I've quickly gone and made it up and gone, there you go, there's a line buying station for you to use in your map, or on any map that you want to play. It's your own placeable. um I recently, um a guy called the Sim Guy reached out and wants to make a no man's land kind of map for himself, and wants to see if I can help him learn Giants Editor and make that a possibility, because that's his favorite kind of style of a map. And I won't make a no man's land kind of map myself, because I see that as a alien gym, and I don't want to feel like I'm invading what he came up with, his concept. It'd be, in my opinion, disrespectful, especially when he's been so kind to let me use his cuttable hedges. Um, so yeah, I've helped out around the community with as best as I could, um, and as I said to Matt back in the day, I think an experienced modder should always be willing to pass on their knowledge, because when they stop, that knowledge is gone unless they're willing to share it. So the more you share it, the more um, the better the mods can be down the line, and the easier it is for people to come into modding in general.
Absolutely. And one thing that I've really noticed, especially within the modding community, the modding portion of the community, is just how generous it really seems like the modders within our community are. Um, I've done an interview with Gaming Joy, also known as Josh, and yourself as far as modders go, and it's one of those that the stories I've heard up until this point just really goes to show just how generous, not only with uh, individuals' time, but with their assets, with their ideas and their knowledge and all that kind of stuff that they really are. And I kind of touched on this earlier in this show, but it just really kind of is heartwarming to know that because of the deep cooperation that we have, again, at the end of the day, it just makes better and better assets and better products for us as the individual players to experience with. So it's great that everybody is able to come together and be so generous, not only with their time in creating these things, but with their time to kind of pass along the knowledge that it takes in order to make this stuff happen. So that's
Hmm.
absolutely amazing.
Well,
So
I'm sure that you found that trying to set these kind of schedules up can be difficult, because of, especially around a modder who's, modders, their time's so busy. Um, but yeah, they for anyone to take time out of their own day to go and help somebody, you've got to appreciate that in the long run, because everybody's busy on something. Even, people who are making YouTube or videos or streaming to one of the various platforms out there, them taking time from their own schedule. Maybe it's family time, maybe it's stream time, video content time, whatever. They're taking time from their day to help you, and you should definitely appreciate it.
oh, absolutely. And that's something that I've come to realize personally, is through this show and the kind of talking with the modders and other creators that I've dealt with up until this point. Just the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The the generosity that's out there and the willingness to do this kind of content and whatnot, and it was the whole reason why we're here at 5 o'clock in the afternoon my time. It's now 6:30. Normally I'm with my family at this point. You might be able to actually hear my kids in the background. I apologize about that.
It's okay.
um, but it's one of those that I spoke with the missus to be able to be like, hey, would you mind? We got Cavalier Roy. He's out in the UK. Can we, open up this time for a couple hours to try and get this done? And thankfully, she was gracious enough to allow that. But when you had, opened up your time slot to be like, oh yeah, let's do this. Let's try and shoot for this time, kind of thing. Yeah, it's not the most optimal time for me personally, but I want to be able to work around your schedule because you're the one who's ultimately at the end of the day coming out to, you know, tell your stories. So
Yeah,
again, it's
no,
just another level of generosity and grace that within this community.
yeah, and I fully, I respect your wife and your kids for giving you that time. Um, it's a difficult one for anybody, and family time is such an important time, and we should definitely hold on to it. Your kids grow up really quick.
Absolutely, yeah. Every moment is precious with them.
Yeah.
So, what was one thing that you never expected when you started creating mods and creating content for Farming Simulator? Some examples are like a sense of community, any unexpected backlash, things along those lines. Like, what was something that you started and you're like, oh, well, that's something I never thought would ever happen?
Um, I've had the backlash. I just shrug that off. I just push it to one side and go, yep, okay, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I think the thing that grabbed me the most was when people were like, "Oh, you're famous now," and I'm like, "I'm not famous. I'm just a guy who sits in front of a computer and makes maps. That doesn't make me famous." And they're like, "No, but you are famous within the farm sim community. You're famous." I don't see myself like that. I see myself as any regular person who's just doing something that they enjoy doing, and and going to Llama and having people come up and go, "Oh, hi, Cavalier Roy, nice to meet you," and it was nice, but it's uh, it's a big, it's like a whole different life in that perspective, because it's not what I was expecting or used to, and it's feels weird, because then you can either get big headed and start looking at yourself like you're better than everybody else, or you can be one of those who goes, no, I'm no more different than you. And when we was at Llama, I had a person who turned around and said, "Oh, I'm just here just to hang around with the famous person, the famous people." And I looked at him and I went, "Dude, I'm no more famous than you," and walked off. You know, that I just that was the thing that grabbed me the most. That was the biggest surprise, was how people look at you and go, "Oh, you're so and so, therefore you're amazing," and all this. And for me, it's just like, well, it's a hobby. I just enjoy doing it.
Well, and
It's
sorry,
it's
go
nothing
ahead.
special. It's nothing special for me. It's nothing special. It's special in that I made it, but it's not special in that it pushes my standing within anything any higher than just a person who's just enjoying doing something that they're doing.
Well, and one thing I would say kind of counter to that is you never really know how people kind of interact with your content on a kind of personal level. So like there's been many instances where people have come to me and said, "Hey, your stuff, really helped me through some tough times and all that stuff." And um, it's a very kind of humbling experience, but maybe that's kind of what they're referring to is not necessarily the fame or like oh well look at you, you're a movie star kind of thing, but it's that kind of recognition of you have kind of entered your way into their lives and thus have kind of carved yourself into a kind of special place within it. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah. That does. Never looked at it like that, but yeah. Um, and if my maps have helped in any way like that, then that makes them even more special.
Well, I mean, and even at a bare minimum, let's say not even a kind of like, oh well, you've helped me through tough times or anything like that. I mean, and you've mentioned this many times how this game is just kind of an escape. You create your maps as a escape from the things that you're going through in real life. And I think a lot of players go through that same kind of thing. Oh man, I wish I could be a part of a farm. Let me hop on my virtual one and kind of do my thing. And you creating the assets that allows people to kind of expand their horizons to get new perspective on things. I think that would be kind of my best good faith interpretation of that kind of an interaction. Oh, well, yeah, I might not be famous, but, I've brought myself into somebody's world to allow them to escape and allow them to wind down from their day and allow them to kind of, go into this world that, that you yourself have created. And it's a very powerful force, so much so that you really don't get an appreciation or an understanding for it until somebody comes to you one day and says, "Hey, you know, this allows me to just kind of escape, the whether the harshness of reality or the mundaneness of the world or whatever the case may be." Like I said, I've got several uh, messages like that in the past, so it's just you know, again, my hopefully good faith interpretation of what they were trying to elaborate there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I am a console player personally.
Hmm.
So I'm only familiar with your stuff as far as the stuff that releases the mod hub and is available for all platforms. Now I'm also familiar with things such as the combined counties, where you took the four maps and merged them all together. Are there any other kind of assets that you've created for Farm Sim that are not either as well known or may not be as well known as to me because I'm ignorant of the PC portion?
Um, no, no. The everything that I had made was released in 22, and anything that I've made after that, like the animals, um, they're they'll be released in 25. Just waiting on Giants and them. So yeah, no, I've kept everything um, either built into the map or released as a standalone placeable.
And do you ever do modding with the intention of just kind of this is for me personally, like kind of thing, like I just tweaked this one little thing, so I'm not going to bother releasing it to everybody else? Or do you really only go with the intention of you know going through and getting whatever assets out to the community as possible?
Everything that I've done is so what is out on the mod hub is what I play with. If I released it, then that's the version that I'm playing. Um, so any mods that are required are the mods that I'm playing with as well. Um, yeah, I don't edit anything of my own work uh, to work any different to what anybody else has or is using in a different way to what I'm doing it. I've modified other people's work to work in a way that I needed it to, um, but that's been kept private between me and anyone else who's playing with me on the server, and and it's strictly been don't distribute this mod anywhere. If you do, you'll be out of the monkey show kind of deal, you know. And and but uh, yeah, we keep them to a very bare minimum. It's very rare that we have to modify anything these days, but we have had to in the past.
So as far as I'm aware, pretty much all your maps that have been released, such as Riverview, Maple, so on and so forth, they're all based on fictional kind of things out of your own creation. Um,
Hmm.
but is there any portion of those maps, like let's take Riverview for an example, is there any portion of them that you've kind of gone out into the world and be like, oh, you know what, that kind of looks cool. Let me try and incorporate that even slightly into the map. Like, is there some place that we could recognize potentially from Riverview as part of a real world, or is it 100% a creation of fiction?
100% creation of fiction. Like Glen Lethan, a perfect example is I don't know how familiar you are with that map, but yeah, the you come out of the farmyard onto the main road and drive past the vehicle store and the supermarket, and you get to the junction at the bottom. And that was the very first piece that was put in on that map, and the map was built around the whole of the road network. And but that was the first piece that was put in, and it was like, I want a road going up there, and I want a road going that way, I want a road going that way. And the general rule is when I come to making a map is I go on Google, I look for a road network that I like, and then I take a screenshot of it and bring it into the map, and then paint the road down, delete the image, and then that becomes the road network, and everything thereafter is all completely fictional. The road isn't even following the transitions of, the way of the lay of the land. There is no um, real world terrain in that segment. It's just that's the road. I'll now incorporate that road to how I want it to feel.
Okay. Okay. So there is a slight element of reality, and it's just the kind of road structure, but everything else is just a making of your own mind, which is incredibly impressive if you ask me. Like, I've always said on this channel many times that I'm not creative. If I were to make a map, somehow, some way, it would end up in 2 dimensions, and it would be like the trees would be at right angles, and it would just everything that couldn't happen, I'd figure out a way to do
Hmm.
it. But
Yeah,
no, that's very highly impressive that that's the case. Um, so
like, Maypole, to be fair, is the closest to a real map. The initial Maypole. I guess the best way to do it would be when we get done is go and have a look at an image of Maypole in 2017. The very first version, you'll see that it was a 1 by 1 play area, and when you look at the mapping when it comes out for 25, you'll see visually, you'll kind of see the original play area, but it's been blended in as best as I can to hide it, but still you can see little bits of it. And um, every field was actually a field. The main farmyard was actually where the main farmyard was, except the road that goes up to Maypole's main farmyard went straight through the yard and carried on out of the map. I decided that I didn't want a lane going through the yard. I wanted a lane going to the yard, so it was your own private lane going to the yard. And then at the end of 2019, or towards the end of 2019, a guy was like, called Stardog, if you, because I was going to retire from map making, to be honest. Um, I hadn't considered putting anything out on ModHub, and I was just like, yeah, I've been doing this for all these years now. Maybe I should take a break and just appreciate other people's work and not focus on my own because I don't play the game enough. And Stardog was like, well, if you're going to retire, please can you make Maypole into the map that it could potentially be, use the whole of the play area. And I took that as a challenge and slowly started expanding the sides out. And so everything outside of that 1 by 1 box area is then fictional. That part of the road didn't exist. That was just then added. So yeah, blending all of them parts in became interesting and fun. And well, Maypole's what we have now, and apparently it's highly loved.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and I can't appreciate or I can't thank even the community enough for making Maypole so special to them.
Oh, and like I said, me personally, it was a special map. I loved doing the series on it because of the versatility that the map offers. It makes it to where a content creator like myself is able to, be so versatile in the type of stuff that is done on that map. There's forestry, there's arable farming, there's animals, there's the whole 9 yards. Like I said, it's a great map. Can't wait for it to come out for 25 because that one's definitely special.
Well,
Um,
back
go
in
ahead.
the day, Riverview, Newbie Farmers, it was known back then in 2017. The What we see now is the mountains, the forestry areas in the mountains. A guy called Bert from Canada was like, we in over here, we do a lot of logging, but our logging is we go in there, we will cut the tree down, then we'll drag it out and we'll process the wood outside of the forestry area. And he went, can I take your map and make a forestry area? So you take from the back of the farm all the way over to the east and then down to the southeast corner, and he did all of that forestry area through there, done all of the little lanes, dirt roads, and everything, the bridges, the all of that. He carved all of that out himself, and even put the swamp in. And he was in his 70s. I haven't seen or heard from him for a while. Hopefully, he's doing okay. But yeah, he done all of that, and um, I've left it all in there as appreciation for what he did because he brought the map into a whole new element in and something that I never thought about doing and made forestry a lot more interesting on that map, and then brought a real world element to the map as well outside of farming itself. And then win 25, it was like, now I need to, these trees have been here since 2017. Now we need to update that forestry areas and make them 25 compatible. And that means they need foliage underneath them. They need to be more denser. There need to be different types of trees. And it's a wild forest. It's not a processing forest. This is a wild forest. So they aren't just all logging trees. They're a mixture of trees. But yeah, but it was but definitely if I would have been really impressed with whatever map he came out with. It would definitely have been a forestry map, but he'd have made a really nice map if he did one back in the day.
And that's something I actually took notice of when I did the tour on Riverview is that the forestry areas are not just kind of a straightforward kind of shot. Like there is the large mixture of like I think they're called like the lodgepole pines and the like I don't want to call them like American elms, but the really kind of limby trees that are on there as well. Like there's a huge eclectic kind of collection of different types of trees, which is going to make forestry work on that map, very very difficult. Which I personally I appreciate that it's not just going to be a straightforward kind of you know visual look. Again, it just
Mm.
offers a really nice look to the map. As not to be just kind of this uniform, bunch of pine trees just going up and down the map kind of thing. It just something I kind of took notice of personally.
Well, I came out with a challenge quite early on in Farm Sim, and certain people have taken it upon themselves to try that challenge out. Um, and Trucker Mats is one of them that's taken it upon himself. It's not an easy challenge, but it makes you think about how you play the game, and But yeah, for some people, they've delved into forestry, and it's interesting to see them going in there doing the trees, and then realizing, oh, this isn't just your regular forestry trees. These are um, the decorative kind of trees that are a lot more harder to work with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so we've established that your maps are kind of the work of your own mind. Have you ever considered doing a map that's based off of a real life location?
No, and the reason for that is when you do that, you have you're opening yourself to so much criticism. I mean, Action David does it well, and we've seen in the community sometimes some people giving backlash and go, it's not how it is in real life. And then somebody will post a video, and they did it on Calmston. They showed a video of side by side of the gameplay and the real life Calmston driving down the road and everything, and it was like, no, that is actually how it is in real life. But you're opening yourself up to so much that when and then the farmer might be like, I don't want you making my farm. Please don't do that. This is private property. I don't want people knowing the layout of my yard and where everything is, or whatever the case may be. So for me, no, I'd rather, if I'm going to do a yard, I'd rather go onto Google, find a random yard, and go like, I like bits of your yard, but I also like bits of your yard. Let's combine them and put them, see how they will work in the game, and if I can get the look that I want. But um, none of my yards have been done like that. They've all been straight from my head.
Okay, so I don't think I've ever thought of it like that before, but then it makes a ton of sense because you're right. It does open you up to quite a bit of backlash from those who, I mean, myself personally, there's a map that was released earlier. Um, it was a Michigan map, and personally, I'm not a huge fan of the map because I'm from the area at which it was based off of, and to me, you're exactly right. It just doesn't feel like home. It doesn't feel like
Mhm.
the area that I've experienced.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to go out there and be like, "Oh, this is garbage," and blah 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 blah, and you know, ram it down the map maker's throat or anything like that. It's one of those. Okay, well, it's not personally for me, so therefore, it's a disappointment more than anything, kind of thing.
Mhm. And
Um,
and that's why I love fictional maps.
no, and
Eh,
and you're right. Is that it opens you up to that extra criticism to where a fictional map, it's a making of your own mind. If somebody likes it, great. If they don't, oh well, move on, kind of
yeah.
thing.
And I have had that backlash, The normally it's like the houses. These are French houses, they're not British style houses. Why are you using them? It completely breaks the immersion when I'm driving down the road and all of a sudden it's a French house that's popping out. And and then, you're talking to somebody from the UK and they're like, well, I've driven around Riverview and that house, I actually see that house when I drive past down the road from where I live. And it's the exact same model. It looks exactly like that house down there. And I've even been shown some of them houses on Google Maps by various people from around the UK, and gone, I don't see why people are giving out that it's not a UK home when they're clearly here. And but as you said, it's if you're from the area, then you go by what you're used to, and if you don't see them kind of houses in your everyday life, then they're not UK homes, and um, and then the barns, because they're not UK, I I wouldn't even say they're American. I'd say they're more German based than American based for the most part for the barns themselves. Maybe they've got some inspiration from American barns. I don't know, but on a whole, I think they're more German based kind of animal barns rather than anywhere outside of Germany. And but for me, it's like I would rather use something that's base game because then that reduces the download size of a file, especially console players who are playing with a limit on what they can have on their hard drives, and also reducing the slot count as well, which is a big factor. And so for me, a fictional map is a fictional map. People can watch Star Wars or Star Trek and completely get immersed by it and go, "Yep, I can believe that. That could happen." But they find it difficult to play a map that's fiction and go, no, that is not what the UK looks like. It's like, well, it's fictional. Who's not to say that an American style house will one day be built somewhere in the UK? Maybe there already is. You don't know. You just
Yeah.
haven't driven past it, so therefore you haven't seen it. So the concept of that being a possibility just has never entered your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are all very good points. Um, so what was one thing that changed between FS22 to FS25 that made your map making just infinitely easier?
Ooh. Um, Animal grazing, being able to make, because in 22 you'd have to for the the map, I would have to have the XML file for the animal barn in my mods folder. Then I'd have to have the animal barn in my mods folder. Then I'd have to make the navigation mesh or for the animals and have that in my mods folder, and then have the XML telling it that's where the i3D is, that's where the navigation mesh is for the animals, and then it meant there was a lot more complexity to it. Now it's just a case of one XML file and then going into game and making the pasture and then putting that into the map and going, there you go. And there's no additional i3ds needed. It's just one XML file. And and I and because Maypole had, every farmyard had a different navigation mesh for each of the animal pastures. Each one of them had to have its own navigation mesh. Then it had to have its own XML file to tell it that that's the navigation mesh for that yard. So there was like what, 8 yards on Maypole. 6 of them were arable. 5 or 6 were arable. You imagine 5 or 6 cow barns, all of them with their own XML files, all with them their own navigation meshes. That's a lot of data that you don't need in your for people to download. I'd rather have an XML file and be done with it.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I have had one other map maker modder on, and I've asked this question to them as well. And I was actually shocked by both of your answers, because I would have thought one of the biggest changes would have been the road networks and how before, at least this is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the subject matter expert on this one. But the way I understood it is that as you were developing the road networks, if you were, say, using like pavement or something like that, and you're putting that down, that it was actually a asset that you would lay on top of the layer of ground, and that it could be pivoted and changed, angles and stuff like that. That's why some of the roads on some maps, the road network would kind of look kind of, I just bumped the mic, I apologize, but it would look kind of angular at certain junctions if the terrain shift was heavy enough. And I, through my naivety, would have presumed that that would have been one of the easier things, because as far as I'm aware now, it's more of a paint texture rather than a like additional asset that goes on top of the canvassing layer or the terrain layer. Is that all kind of accurate as to how I described it?
With the road network, you paint a asphalt texture down, so then it tells the game that it's a hard surface, so you won't get any terrain undulations and things like that. And then you take the road piece and you're basically saying it's invisible, and it will project the image to the terrain. So then it automatically projects whatever that image is on the terrain. You can drag that particular object either below the map or have it up above in the air, non-collidable. So from a game point of view, you'll never know it's there unless you're on PC and then you press like F4 or F5 and then you can see the shapes of things. But you can pull that thing quite far down under the map and never know it's there, but have it projecting onto the map to the terrain above. And yeah, it would make it a lot easier. But I tried doing that with my roads, or the roads I'm using even, because they're from 2019. But the way that they're made, some of the parts of the edges of the map, which the road, sorry, which are like a dirt texture, they would show up. and in the village it was going over the top of the cobblestone. I'm like, no, I can't have that. So I ditched that particular part, and they're solid roads themselves. So if you dig underneath the roads, you'll actually dig under the roads. The roads won't adjust to the terrain.
Okay.
And that will be the same for Maypole, Glenleithen, and Ebony Island, because they all use the same system.
I gotcha. All right, so we actually are coming up to a hard stop here very, very shortly. So I've got one last question, and then we're going to start wrapping things up. So, one of my favorite mods, bar none, is the farm production. That one is, I use that so often in FS22, and really looking forward to it when it comes out for FS25. Have you considered making any other mods, outside of just the maps themselves?
Um, yeah, I have. I've considered making productions. Farmer Dad was like, "Are you going to release your productions mod where you've changed the fill types for different production chains, and are you going to release that as its own mod so people can play outside of your maps?" And I'm like, I never really thought about it, and I'm not sure if I will still, but it's a possibility that that could become a thing, and in which case then you'll be able to make sandwiches and yogurt and all sorts.
Oh, awesome. Well, again, looking forward to that one as well. So we got a couple more questions here from the audience. We've got one. They're both from Dust Bunny, I believe. I don't see that they're tagged by anybody else. So the first question is your map description says that there are 25 collectibles. However, Farmer Klein said they're not on the map and will be coming on a future update. Is that true?
That is true, along with the sellable or the removable walls. But sadly, due to the changes that will be coming to Riverview, it will require a new save game.
Okay.
So it might be worth holding off until the update comes on, or just using it as a test map for other things.
I gotcha. And then the second question is, why was the newbie farm sign removed from the main farm?
Because Newbie Farm had been around since 2011, I felt maybe it's best to actually move away from that and just have it that it's now Riverview and Newbie Farm is no more. It used to have a story back in the day that you took over from your grandparent or your grandfather, who was ill, and he'd sold off most of his land and a lot of his equipment, and you've gone in there. You'd fell out with him years ago, so therefore, it's a big surprise that he's reached out to you, and you've gone there and you've taken over the farm. He's passed away, and you felt that you wanted to do the farm justice and bring it back to where it was once one of the prides of the area, and one of the key elements to the village. They all relied on you producing your goods for them, and yeah, the Sanubi farm for that point of view was like, yeah, maybe I should move away from the sign and let now be known as Riverview and let Newbie Farm pass, because when people go, "Oh, you're playing Newbie Farm," nobody remembers, or only the ancient people like me kind of remember Newbie Farm.
Okay, okay. Let's see. I'm doing a quick scan of the chat here, just real quick, to make sure I'm not missing anything. It looks like there is one more question from Rail Fanning Jonah. Says, if you could create one more. No, I already got that one. Why is that not updating? Oh, because that would be why. Uh. Okay, yeah, I think we got through all the chat and all the questions. I want to thank you very, very much, Roy. Again, I had an absolute blast here. We're going to move on to the last segment here called That's a Silage Wrap. So, do you want to give us just a kind of a quick list of the future projects that you have going on?
So the Maypole is in the works. I'm taking a break for now. Obviously, Riverview's update is priority. That will go in sometime this month. I just want to leave it a little bit just to give the community a chance to report any issues that they may find that we missed during the hour testing phase. Um, and then that will go off into Giants once we've got everything implemented. Again, the collectibles will be added at that point, as well as the removable walls, and maybe a few surprises added in. The description will obviously be updated as well to match that. Then Maypole will be followed on, and the work will continue on there, followed by Ebony Island, Glenleith, and we'll see how we stand at that stage with as far as combined counties goes, and if not combined counties, then a whole new map for 25.
Excellent, excellent. And you remind us where we can all find you.
I'm on a Monkey Show Discord over on YouTube, and I'm on Twitch. I don't stream to Twitch, but you can find me on Twitch under Cavalier Roy as well.
Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and hanging out with us and kind of giving us a more in-depth understanding of who you are and what it is that you do for our community. Again, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you for everything that you do, and I really am looking forward to everything that you have in store for us in the future.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody who turned up today to ask questions or just sit here and watch and listen.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so very, very much. One last thing. If you're enjoying this show and you're enjoying this kind of content, and there are specific modders, map makers, YouTubers, Twitchers, whatever the case may be, that you would like to have me do an interview with, go ahead and send me their name in the Discord or in whatever social media that you can have access to. Go ahead and just send me their name and means of which I can reach out to them. I would love to have more modders, map makers, YouTubers, etc. on this show, so we can continue to make content like this. And like I said, I really, really appreciate you coming on here, Roy. We're gonna go ahead and do a outro there. If you wouldn't mind hanging on until after the end of the outro, and I'll catch you on the other side.
Yep, no problem. You're
All right.
welcome, Rusty, as well, by the way.
I'm sorry, you broke up there. What'd you say?
I was just saying thank you to Rusty for the great interview.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, like I said, thank you all so very, very much for coming out here today. I know we're competing with the Super Bowl right now, so the people that have hung in there, greatly appreciate y'all, but appreciate everybody who showed up today. If you enjoyed it, please show us by liking, sharing, subscribing, following, commenting, doing all the things the algorithms enjoy you doing. The shows you're engaged with this channel and enjoying the content. And that being said, I hope everybody has a fantastic day and take care.